I'm going to start with this quote from 2 Chronicles. Text reads, Jehoram was 32 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 8 years. He passed away, to no one's regret, and was buried in the city of David, but not in the tombs of the kings. I like that kind of stuff. He died, to no one's regret. Somebody was having a little fun when they were writing the scriptures because, passing on some sentiment of what was really going on in the people's minds of the time. I appreciate the light touch, the comic relief, if you will, to the usual, shall we say, scriptural routine of how we describe things. He passed away, to no one's regret. And it kind of hit me. It's like, I can't believe in all the years that I've been doing this that I have never talked about humor in the Word. It's like, how did I miss that? How did I miss that? And so I thought we'd go through today and just kind of look and see where God shows a sense of humor. Because you don't want to be a humorless Christian. You don't want to be one of those people they show in the Facebook memes with this crotchety old man with his hat on. He's, all upset and, oh, you kids get off my lawn kind of guy. We don't want to be that kind of person. And that's not who the Lord wants us to be. He doesn't want us to be sad and dour. And you might have met these kind of people, and you probably don't want to be around those people. So why is it that we see the Lord as so serious all the time? The Bible does have funny moments, and therefore I kind of think, well, if you don't have a little bit of laugh in your life, then perhaps your Christian life isn't complete. So what we're going to do is take a look at some of the different scenes and stories in the Word today and just get a sense of how humor is used. And we'll start with one of my favorite stories. It's this scene where Elijah is calling on the prophets of Baal. Everybody's got an altar. Your team has the Baal team. I'm the God team. And we're going to just see which deity lights it on fire. We're going to douse it with water. We're going to do all these things. And we're going to see which God shows up. Now, of course, you know this story. Baal does not show up for the party. And it's when the prophets of Baal start to get exasperated. They cut themselves and they limp around and they start to look all sad. But of course, Baal doesn't do anything. He doesn't do anything. And this is where Elijah gets kind of bored and unleashes a torrent of sarcasm on them. It says here, Elijah at noon mocked them, saying, Cry aloud, for he is a god. Either he is musing, or maybe he is relieving himself, or he's on a journey, or perhaps he's asleep and must be awakened. Now, I know it's a reflection of me and my sense of humor that I find that so funny, but I enjoy the sarcastic Elijah. Maybe he's on the toilet. That's why your God can't answer it. He's just busy. Right. So I like the kind of rationality that Elijah is educating us with. He's like, can you see from experience now that what you're worshiping ain't working for you? Can't you see that? And it's one of these things that we're going to see in these examples of humor is that sometimes the Lord just says, all right, you think that's a good idea? Let's try that. Let's have some experience around what you're saying, and let's see how that works for you. And so this is what they do. Set up your altar. Whoever shows up wins. It's a great test because obviously something that doesn't exist can't win. Now, while I like that story as an amusing story in the scripture, the purpose really is to kind of look and see, well, does the Lord have a sense of humor? And someone could see this story and say, oh, well, this is just showing Elijah's sarcastic way of doing things. Elijah had kind of a sense of humor, but does the Lord? And what comes up as the most frequently cited example of Jehovah of the Old Testament having a sense of humor is the story of Abraham and Sarah and the pronunciation that they will have a child. This one's in your order of service. You can follow along if you so choose. Genesis chapter 18. And he said, I will certainly return to you according to the time of life. And behold, Sarah your wife shall have a son. Sarah was listening in the tent door which was behind him. Now Abraham and Sarah were old, well advanced in age, and Sarah had passed the age of childbearing. Therefore Sarah laughed within herself, saying, After I have grown old, shall I have the pleasure of my Lord being old also? And the Lord said to Abraham, Why did Sarah laugh, saying, Shall I surely bear a child since I am old? Is anything too hard for the Lord? At the appointed time I will return to you, according to the time of life, and Sarah will have a son. But Sarah denied it, saying, I did not laugh, for she was afraid. And he said, No, you did laugh. And skipping into Genesis 21. Now Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born to him, and Sarah said, God has made me laugh, and all who hear will laugh with me. She also said, Who will have said Abraham to that Sarah would nurse children? For I have borne him a son at his old age. Now, the story gets cited as God having a sense of humor because, well, what's he doing? He's giving people what they asked for at 99 and 89 years old. You want to get a kid? No problem. I got you covered. I'll give you a kid. Surely they wanted one. They wanted an heir to pass on all their fortune to because they were wealthy. You want a kid? I got you. No problem. And this whole interaction here in, I guess, verses 12 to 15 of chapter 18, I can see that being played out with God being kind of a light-hearted, almost comically indignant, saying, why did she laugh? Is there anything too hard for the Lord? I mean, come on, I can do it. I created everything. Why are you laughing at me? Come on. Sarah did not laugh, for she was afraid. And that kind of puts some damper on my theory of God's being lighthearted in this moment. But it doesn't necessarily mean he was being serious about it. She just might have been afraid she was in God's presence and she didn't want to offend the Almighty. Fair enough. But I think that at least inside God might have been laughing, going, come on, don't you understand? I'm right here, the Almighty, and you think I can't do this? Come on. In this internal sense, though, you can get a little flavor of this too, because what Swedenborg says is happening on the internal sense is that you have Jehovah God looking at his human side and basically going, oh my gosh, what a mess. What a mess. Here it is from 22:16 of Secrets of Heaven. Celestial good and spiritual good do not laugh, but express their delight and cheer in a different manner in their face, speech, and movement of the body. Not that the Lord laughed, but that he perceived from the divine what the nature still was of the rational within him, and how much of the human was still present in it, which was to be expelled. This is what is meant in the internal sense by Sarah's laughter. So it's like he looks at this humanity that's within him, and he's like, oh my gosh, this is ridiculous. It's like when you show up and you see this big project in front of you. You volunteered to help your friend clean out their garage, and you show up and go, oh dear, what have I signed myself up for? This is crazy. And he's looking at his humanity and going, oh, wow, there's a lot to be expelled here, a lot I got to work through. And it's like he's laughing, but not really laughing. It's some sort of a celestial version of laughter, I guess, is what's going on. So there's something going on there, this incongruity that makes for a humorous moment of, this is where I want to be and this is where I am. I got some work to do. Another example of God giving people what they wanted, like he did for Sarah and Abram, is in the book of Numbers. And you'll see this in chapter 11, verses 19 and 20. People were in the desert. They're complaining. Oh, if only we had meat to eat. We remember all the stuff we had in Egypt. We got for nothing. The cucumbers, the melons, the leeks, the onions, the garlic. But now, we're so bored of this manna. Our strength is dried up. So how does God respond? He says, the Lord will give you meat, and you shall eat. You shall eat for 1 day, or 2 days, or 5 days, or 10 days, or 20 days, but a whole month until it comes out of your nostrils. I mean, I think God's having a bit of a laugh. A celestial laugh. Not really a laugh, but a laugh. You want it? You got it, pal. I'm going to give it to you. And it's once again giving people what they ask for. And it seems to be a way God shows his sense of humor. For those of you who have read the book Conjugal Love, this is a tactic used in the next life, according to Swedenborg. People show up in the next life and they say, hey, what's your idea of heaven? And they go, oh, my idea of heaven is having delightful conversation and witty retorts with all sorts of people in these social interactions. They say, great, no problem. We'll take you to this mansion filled with rooms and you can all hang around and have witty banter with each other to eternity. Of course, this sounds great at the beginning, and you know how this story goes. After a while, the witty banter becomes wearisome. And as they try to escape the building, the angels close the doors and lock them, say, enjoy your heaven, thank you very much. It's great, isn't it? And they suddenly realize, oh, you know what? Maybe what we wanted wasn't so great after all. The Lord humorously teaches us through experience and through giving us what it is that we wish for. And we sit there and go, all right, that's what I asked for. And I guess part of the thing is we have to learn to not take ourselves so seriously, right? We have to say, all right, God, you got me on that one. You got me. Jen and I laugh about this all the time. We go, oh, we wanted to move south. Send us to the southern hemisphere. Right. We're going to send you so far south, you almost start going north again. God has a sense of humor. He heard our cries to move south, and he delivered. We should have had this sermon years ago. So, yeah, it's, in New Age circles, they call it the law of attraction. But I kind of wonder if the new church could rename it, the law of God giving you what you asked for, or something like that. The law of the Lord, saying, sure, I'm accommodating, no problem, have at it. And I've used this principle, I think, as a parent to very good effect. Every now and again, it'll be later in the evening and Zach has this hankering for ice cream. And I'll say, sure, no problem, but you got to eat the whole tub. You can't just have a little bit, you got to have the whole thing. And if you want to do that, you can go right ahead. And suddenly he thinks, I do want the ice cream, but I don't want the whole thing. Same thing with staying up late. Oh, can I stay up late? Yep, but you got to stay up all night. You can't go to bed at all. You got to stay up all night. I don't want to do it. Oh, well, that's the deal. You want to stay up late? You got to make it the whole way through. Then he goes to bed cheerfully on his own with it because he doesn't need that experience to realize that, oh yeah, I don't want that much of staying up late. But this is all circled around Lord of the Old Testament. And I think we should spend a little bit of time on how Jesus used humor, because he uses it to teach and to heal and to show that laughter and education are not mutually exclusive. Now, Jesus' humor is subtle. It's not slapstick. People aren't falling over and tripping on things and having anvils fall out of their head and out of the sky into their head. He doesn't open the Sermon on the Mount with a joke to warm up the crowd. Right? And the gospel narratives aren't there to display how good Jesus' jokes are, right? I mean, that's just a fundamental problem when you're trying to see humor, because that's not the point of the Gospels, is to show how funny he is. But if we look at what he does, we can see that he actually has a good sense of humor about him. And one of the things that I uncover in this is that apparently ancient Semitic humor was really into exaggeration and hyperbole. And so we get a witness to this, that, Jesus is tuned in to the kind of humor that makes sense to them. So think about this. When Jesus is talking about the person who has a speck in their eye, right? People are complaining about the speck in their eye. Oh, don't look at the speck in their eye when you've got a log in your own. Exaggeration, hyperbole. Oh, look at what we've got going on here. There's something more than just a speck in your eye. You've got a whole log. All right? He's using his humor to educate and to inform and to see the ridiculousness of what people are trying to do. He tells the Pharisees, here you are trying to strain out the gnat, but you're trying to swallow a camel. All right? Exaggeration, hyperbole. Don't you see the foolishness of what you're doing? He's mocking them, but he's also educating them and converting and informing them. Jesus exposes our foibles not to embarrass us, maybe a little, but he's trying to illustrate and transform us. He also has some wit, some irony. Peter. Do you remember what he gives the name Peter? Peter, you are the rock. You're the rock. Was Peter a rock? No. He was not a rock. He was always flip-flopping around who to believe. When the moment of truth comes, you're going to deny me 3 times. No, I won't. What does he do? Denies Jesus 3 times at the most important moment. So it's almost as if like he's calling him rock in an ironic kind of way, the way you'd call, Mike Lockhart shorty. It's just not really that. Similarly, with a couple other, it was, which was James and John. He gives them the name of Boanerges, translated as sons of thunder, sons of commotion, because of their impulsive and often misplaced zeal. They were over the top and they got themselves into trouble. And so Jesus is having a little bit of fun with them, calling them, you guys are the sons of thunder. I think, in the new church, we should understand this because, we all can see these guys and say, we have some of that in us. We have some of this rock that Peter is in us, and we are the sons of thunder, or daughters of thunder, if you prefer, in us. And I think it's part of it is to be able to make us laugh at ourselves and see that our own stuff is a little crazy, a little ridiculous, and that maybe, just maybe, not take ourselves so seriously. I think that's the point of a lot of Jesus' humor, is just to be able to look back and relax and laugh at yourself. Because on the other side of the equation, you have the Pharisees, who are seemingly completely devoid of humor. They're paralyzing rigidity. They're very somber and serious in the way they do things. And this kind of makes them the foils of Jesus' wit, subtle though it may be. Think about it. He calls them the blind leading the blind. That's a humorous image of, wandering around and they're lost and they're leading other people. Same thing about the gnat and the camel. He talks about them in that way. So he's seeing them and using their rigidity as saying, you know what? This isn't the way you're supposed to be. You're taking yourself too seriously. Too seriously. Relax. I think a lot of the ways that Jesus describes the Pharisees are meant so that the child part of us will just look at them and laugh and go, these guys are ridiculous. These guys are ridiculous. Who would be this way? We are. We are. Look, there are plenty of other times that we find humorous stuff, and I can go on, but I'm not going to do that. But I will leave you with this one, with Job. Job is questioning God, and he's hammering at God, saying, well, how could you let these things happen? And I just have a little bit here from Job 38 as God humorously, I think, answers Job. He says, who is this who darkens the counsel by words without knowledge? Now prepare yourself like a man, and I will question you, and you're going to answer me. Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Tell me if you have understanding. Who determined its measurements? Surely you know. Is God being sarcastic here? Yes. Who stretched the line upon it? To what were its foundations fastened? Or to who laid its cornerstone? When the morning stars sang together, and all the sons of God shouted for joy? Have you commanded the morning since their days began, and caused the dawn to know its place, that it might take hold of the ends of the earth, and the wicked be shaken out of it? Do you know the way, because you were born then, or because the number of your days is great? Right? You think you've got a problem with God? Let me tell you, were you there when this whole thing was set up? Is it because you've been around so long that you know so much? Come on. You know, he's being sarcastic, but he's using it to illuminate, to educate, to transform. He's trying to, I think, put a bit of a humorous spin on the whole situation. And I think in a lot of the times when we see the Lord's teaching, you know, whether it be in the Old Testament or the New, we see that this humor is there for a purpose. It's there to assist in the illustration of a point that God is trying to drive home, either with, say, some dramatic irony, or with giving you what you want, or just getting us to take a look and laugh at ourselves a little bit. Sometimes the humor feels out of place because we don't have lots of humor in the Bible. It's not, you know, like I say, that's not the point of the Bible to be a funny book. But it is there. And we do ourselves a disservice when we miss it. Because if we miss it, it leaves us with this idea that God just doesn't have this lighter self. It leaves us with some difficult things to reconcile with church and worship and how we do things and how we live our life and how we treat others and how we talk to other people and how we tell stories. So I think humor is a very important thing, and I hope I'm not saying this just for my own bias of enjoying humor, but I do think that these stories really show that God does have a sense of humor. And if we look back at our own lives, I think we can see plenty of times where we asked the Lord for something and He gave it to us. And we said, oh no. Be careful what you wish for, because God just might give it to you. Amen.